Hi guys, it's April the 29th, 2020, and Gordy Tong is back on my show for a second time. I would describe him as a ufologist. He's been a ufologist in Vancouver for almost 60 years. He's 71, and he's back on for the second time. We're going to talk about the relationship between UFOs and the New World Order, what the connection is. So welcome back to the show, Gordy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, let's tackle another topic related to the UFO phenomena.
Yeah, you've got a lot of knowledge. Yeah, so you said you were telling me off camera that there's this history to the New World Order idea, how it slipped into ufology, kind of.
Yeah, back in the 80s, there was an event called the harmonic convergence. And there were certain locations that people were called to go to, like Mount Shasta was one. And this event was inspired by a man named Jose Arguelles. I think he wrote some material about the Mayan culture and the Mayan calendar. And he's suggested that people would gather at places like Mount Shasta to contact what he called the higher galactic intelligences related to the UFO phenomena.
Ooh.
Okay, I got this in a letter. I photographed the newsletter, and I had a slideshow at one time connecting the harmonic convergence to this idea of world order. But in 1980, I think it was 1983, I attended a conference out at UBC. It was not put on by UBC, but there was an event called the Human Unity Conference. Okay, and one of the buzz phrases at this conference was "think locally but act globally."
Hey, that's the Brian Ruhe show. I think locally. No, I think globally, act locally. You mean think globally,
okay.
Act locally.
Well, they were saying act globally, but act locally, but
think globally.
Just think globally. So
okay.
So
but where are they going with this?
Yeah, there was a book called "Unmasking the New Age Movement," written by Doug Grutheis. He was a researcher of worldviews and current trends.
You know a lot of people, a lot of stuff, Gordy. You have a good memory.
Doug Grutheis, we invited him to come and speak here in Vancouver, but he wrote a book called "Unmasking the New Age Movement." That's his first book.
What group were you with at that time?
He was with a college Christian ministry group.
No, you said we. Do you mean your church? Who was we?
No, we is myself and maybe, yeah. We just wanted him to come and speak.
Oh, some of your friends.
Yeah, we did actually have him speak at some churches up here in Vancouver, but he was actually a follower of the New Age movement at one time himself, and but he got involved. I met him in Seattle when I was in Seattle. He was involved with a student ministry called Probe Ministries, and he used to go to some of these big UFO events back in the 80s, like myself. We had UFO events down at the expo site at Pan Pacific. There were some really big gatherings, and so he was researching the phenomena. And in one of the chapters of his book, he had a chapter called New Age Politics. So he was starting to notice this trend that some New Age people, the word New Age is not used much anymore. A lot of people don't call themselves New Agers. They call themselves light workers. They call themselves spiritual, but not religious.
But I think it comes from the New World Order actually created the New Age movement from the very beginning was a New World Order creation deliberately and methodically, I believe.
There could have been, from my research, I believe that there was something it's not just something human that's creating this movement, okay? The people that have what are called, I told you, unitive mystical experiences, they seem to be introduced to this idea of oneness, of creating a one world religion. As a result, the mystics of religions in the past, whether you're Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, is Muslim, mystics at that time, in the early days, kept within their religion. They didn't cross religions and have interfaith dialogue and all that stuff. That wasn't happening. But at this Human Unity Conference, there were people there of different religions, the Sikh religion, people from the Finhorn community.
No, I bet the New World Order was behind the whole idea of interfaith. It's probably they were behind it. Even within Buddhism in Vancouver, they have, let's get all the Buddhist groups together. Let's all pray about the COVID thing. I think that's all being organized by the same
Well,
people.
there's a woman named Carol Matriciana. She's a former New Ager herself. She was brought up in India. She was a practitioner of yoga, and at first she thought everything was fine, but then eventually, you know, she started to research this area, and she came up with a video in the 80s, which I ordered and I showed and I gave it to people to see. It was called Gods of the New Age. You can still watch it on YouTube. It's called Gods of the New Age, and it sums up a lot of her research. And even in her video, she was saying that this movement, back then it was called New Age, was going global. It wasn't just something that was, you know, just some Christian, certain New Age communities here and there.
Was this the 1980s?
This was back in the early 80s. In the early 80s, the UFO, the New Age movement was really taking off. But at UBC, there was people from the Flying Saucer Club that attended this Human Unity conference there, like Herb, what's his name? The leader of the Flying Saucer Club. He attended, Herb Clark.
So there's a spillover from the UFO Flying Saucer into the
UFO
New
meetup
Age
group
thing.
actually went. There were New Agers already involved.
So who was leading them? Was there a group of people behind this leading them into this?
Well,
was
there was a fellow
here?
named Herb Clark. Okay, but Herb Clark was the leader, and he did a workshop at the Human Unity conference on the UFO subject. So
tell us a bit about his history. Like, you're so good. Like, when did he start, and what was his administration? How long was he with the?
Okay, I don't know enough about his history. I met him in person a few times. I met him at UBC, you know, at the Human Unity conference.
So what was he like as a person?
He was actually a very nice person. He would be someone who just wanted to figure out what all this UFO phenomena was all about. I mean, he was. I don't think he was much of a mystic or anything. But he had a real fascination. He's passed away now, you know. He was actually into ham radio. I had a school teacher, a science teacher, who was a friend of Herb Clark, and he was into ham radio. And he was someone who knew. Brian Fuster knew as well. But anyways, I don't know enough about his earlier history. Okay, but anyways, we're starting to see this UFO connection with something that potentially could go global. The UFO phenomena is a global phenomenon. It's not just happening in the United States.
The American side, it's only us that get the flying saucers.
No, UFOs have been seen in almost every major country of the world. And
Antarctica too.
There are contactees and abductees in many places in the world. Dr. Jacobs wrote, I think, 2 or 3 books on the abduction phenomenon. He wrote about another thing about hybrids. And he was interviewing abductees from many places in the world, not just Americans that were having these abduction experiences. And some of these abductees were being told that there was a coming change. There was a new government that was coming to the planet.
So there's a plan here, probably by aliens working through our human elites then.
Well, these aliens are interdimensionals. I believe some of them have a fallen nature. Okay. Now, Valiant Thor, even though, you know, Dr. Strange just thought he was unfallen, his philosophy revealed that he had a nature that was fallen. Okay. And it's hard to explain why I come to that conclusion. But
so you're not a believer in Valiant Thor because he didn't really support Jesus Christ the way you do. You're a Christian.
Well, Jesus, when he was invited as a special guest to their council meetings, this Jesus was strangely very silent, didn't say very much at all. It was actually all the teaching for the inner circle and the things that were studied were from Valiant Thor himself. He was giving his own, you know, spiritual, philosophical take to people that were interested in the UFO phenomena.
So is Valiant Thor placing himself above Jesus Christ?
No, he doesn't, but he also is a shapeshifter. There's different pictures of him. There's a picture, you just type in Valiant Thor in Google image search, and there's 2 different pictures of him. One, when he was involved allegedly with the Philadelphia experiment, okay?
Oh,
and
wow.
He had a pointed chin. He had blonde hair, looked like a crew cut. But in this other picture that was given to Dr. Strange's through a military photographer, there was a contactee called Howard Menninger. You know, he claimed to have met beings from either Mars or Venus. And he invited, somehow Valiant Thor was at a meeting in New Jersey. I think it was New Jersey. And there was a photograph taken of Valiant Thor and his crew. In that photograph, Valiant Thor, he looks like a Hollywood movie star.
He does. It is a very good looking guy.
Well,
Darker
very
hair.
good looking, chiseled features, wavy brown hair.
Oh, thank you, Gordy.
But later, you know, there's this other photo. Phil Schneider provided a picture. He said his father worked with the Philadelphia experiment. There's a picture of Valiant Thor at a meeting of scientists.
I want to ask you, do you think the Philadelphia experiment was actually real? It really did happen?
There are people that claim it was real, okay?
I don't know. What do you think?
Also, I met a fellow through someone who called me. I had a UFO hotline, and this woman, Brenda, called me. And she introduced me to some people that were involved with the Montauk Project and experiments related to time travel, teleportation.
What's the relationship between the Montauk Project? Tell the audience what it is and its relationship with the Philadelphia
some
experiment.
of the science and some of the technology that was used at Montauk was based on the Philadelphia experiments, is what Andrew Basiago and Bernie Mendez, who I met, claimed. And I said, well, where did this technology, you know, okay, you acquired this thing called the Montauk chair. The Montauk chair was depicted in the Schwarzenegger movie Total Recall. It was a chair that a person could sit in, and computers and probes were put on to the, you know, the brain of that person. But if they had a nightmare or they would visualize something, what they visualized, what the nightmare would come true. Like there was a person who was in the chair, I forgot his name now, but he sat in this chair and he had a nightmare about a Bigfoot creature, you know, and then this thing manifested at Montauk and started to destroy, you know, equipment.
Now, is this real life or the movie?
No, this is not in the movie. This is what Bernie Mendez told me, because he was involved. He claimed that Richard Nixon hired Bernie Mendez or appointed him to monitor what was happening at Montauk. I'm not sure if Bernie's background may have been in some kind of engineering or some type of, you know, there were engineers and scientists at Montauk, but the technology to create the idea of teleportation was gleaned off of the things that happened at the Philadelphia experiment. Because this
that
was
ship, 1943 when a ship was moved.
Yeah, this ship teleported, and also there was time travel involved from some of the researchers involved.
Do you believe that really happened?
I think there's evidence that it did happen from witnesses and whistleblowers.
Wow. You're so well connected, Gordy. It amazes me how well connected you are.
Well, sometimes I just meet certain people at certain times, and I'm, you know, all this stuff is, you know, adding to, you know, my own research. And
well, you persisted for like over 55 years, so I think that's good. Like, if you want to study any subject, you go to someone who's been in that field for decades. That's why you're a guest on the show. That makes
the longer you look at the subject, you can see more things. I mean, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, if you don't even know what the picture is supposed to look like yet, you know, you don't have a box cover that shows you what the jigsaw puzzle. All you can look at is the different pieces of the puzzle, right? And as you start to assemble the pieces, connect the dots, you're starting to see something. And the longer you do it, the picture becomes more clear. But the other idea is that if there's an infinite personal reference point, I call it a reference point, an infinite reference point, that is revealed to us, that is, you know, we're not just in the dark, okay? If you have a light in a dark room, you could see more things, right? So if we are the creation of God, all living things are the creation of an infinite personal creator, he's not going to leave us in the dark. He's going to give us some revelation about the purpose of his creation, why we're here, you know, what about the afterlife, all this stuff you know, so Christians believe, and not just Christians, but there are Jews and there are people that read the Bible, and they believe that there is two types of revelation. One is called specific revelation, that is like in the form of scripture that you can read, and you know, you can analyze, and you can check if it's historical or if there's evidence that these events that are in the Bible actually happen. Okay, and there's Christian archaeologists that are discovering that there are things in the Bible that can be proved through archaeology and science. So, so we have what is called general revelation. General revelation is given to everyone. Everyone is living in a world that, you know, didn't just pop up out of nowhere. You know, there's design in the universe, fine tuning and for living things to survive. You know, if the Earth was too close to the sun or too far from the sun, there wouldn't be any life. If we didn't have the right atmosphere, we didn't have the influence of the moon. There's a lot of things that allow life to exist here. Now, what for? What's the purpose of it? Is just for people to dominate other people, survival of the fittest. You know, there's got to be more.
Maybe individuals can come up with their own purpose. I don't know if there's a purpose.
Well, let's say we have the potential for many purposes. I mean, we can do good things, you know, heal people, be doctors, but
oh, thank you, Gordy.
Okay, we can, you know, there's many callings in life. Okay, you can be a football player, and some there's football players that are Christians that glorify God in their, you know, the way they play football. I met some of these players. I used to be a photographer for the BC Lions.
Or you can be Lenin and Trotsky.
Well, you can be, yeah, but maybe I wouldn't say that atheistic communism was God's purpose for these people, but they chose that purpose.
But they had their purpose, right? Killed 20 million people.
Yeah, they went in that direction. Okay, so we have free will. The problem with any highly intelligent life form, and even some animals have a certain amount of free will. You know, they have instinctual behavior, but an animal that's treated badly, like a dog, can also become evil. It can start to, you know, bite and attack people if the owner is very cruel to that dog or trains that dog to be cruel. So how we treat other people, how you know, how we view, you know, our place in this universe. Or what is the purpose of life? Is it just to eat and procreate and then we die, or is there more to life? You know, is there an afterlife? These are big questions that philosophers and theologians have struggled with or
big important questions.
Yeah, but so right now there are people noticing this trend toward globalism, but this trend is not new. There's been people that have been involved with the United Nations, people that have been involved with you know, big corporations, and some of these people and media outlets that have a globalistic perspective. They don't just see themselves as Americans. They see themselves as citizens of this world or this earth. But hey, we're not alone in this universe. We're starting to discover that there's other intelligent life forms, and some of this life form is manifesting in what we call the UFO phenomena. So why don't you ask a question, because you know, my brain is just
yeah, I'm thinking with the New World Order agenda, I could see last 2 centuries it ramping up since, like, through the Rothschild-Rockefeller relationship, at least since the 1880s. So I'm wondering how ufology relates to that. Like, my current thesis, even recently in Richard Dolan's members videos, he thinks that the human elite are basically agents of aliens, perhaps reptilians. He said there could be like 80 different types of aliens. It's very confusing who's who. But he actually believes that like the Rothschild human elite is working for aliens. So that's my current thesis. So
where did he get this evidence that some of these people are in contact with aliens? From what research did he discover that?
Well, he was giving a video summation of his current views, so he didn't give sources at that time. But when he stayed with me here in 2014, I said to him, don't you think maybe the Rothschilds are trying to get some power from the aliens, trying to supplicate the aliens? And he said, well, I think it's the other way around. He said, I think the aliens are telling the Rothschilds what to do.
Okay, if we look at what are called UFO religions, there are UFO cults and religions on this planet. Raelian movement claimed at one time they had up to 80,000 followers. There are UFO religions and cults in South America. and other places in Europe. And so what do UFO religions actually believe? Some of them have a globalistic philosophy. Like the Osiris Society, they have prophecies that have come to them, I guess, through these beings they think are aliens, and maybe through this being they call the Master Jesus. They envision some type of world leadership. There's this person that's supposed to show up on the scene. He's called the Globe Master.
This sounds like an antichrist. Like this sounds like a
Well,
negative agenda.
it sounds like an
bad.
antichrist type of thing. And also,
Dark.
David Jacobs has been told by abductees that there's this coming government. It's called the change. And when the change is fully realized, those that cooperate with this government, this alien human hybrid government, will have a purpose. They'll have, they'll be allowed to live. Those abductees that resist this agenda, there is no future for them, is what they're told.
Maybe this is the depopulation program. Maybe they want to have 500 million people and kill 7 billion.
Timothy Good, the top British researcher, in one of his recent YouTube videos. I met him at the conference as well, just briefly spoke to him in 1989. But he's become an abductee himself. He's been taken from his home. If you get too close to the UFO phenomena and you're not protected, you can be abducted. Okay, if you really want to get close to this phenomenon and figure it out, some of these people want to make contact.
I mean, that's cool. I like to get abducted.
Oh, okay. Well, if you desire to make contact and you put out that thought to the universe or whatever, it will, let's say, facilitate that happening. I
usually don't have much luck though. Not much happens in my life.
Al Matthews is a good example. He saw a UFO as a kid playing hockey.
Saw some flying saucers. He told me.
He saw 3 UFOs over a power plant. Some of his friends saw it as well, and his friends were not as that interested, but he was very interested, and he thought, "Whoa, I got to know more about this stuff." And the more he researched it, the more books he read. I think he established, I guess, some connection to these beings that were telepathic, and they started to appear to him.
Yeah, he set the intention.
And he set the intention. So some of the contactee groups right now, even Stephen Greer's group, they have to use some kind of mental intention, meditation, puja ceremonies, let's say sounds from crop circles. There's things that show you want to make contact.
Yeah, I've been out with their group out in the countryside.
Yeah, some abductees have made contact that were not abductees to begin with, but they shone a flashlight at a UFO while they're fishing. That's the Pasaluga case, where 3 fishermen night fishing on a boat, and they see this UFO over the lake.
That happened to a friend of mine just a dozen blocks here by the Pacific Ocean. The video I released a month and a half ago, he was with 3 friends, and one shined a flashlight. It was a 35-foot sphere 100 meters from them, and started coming towards them. Then told his friend, "Put the flashlight down."
So were they abducted?
No, what happened, the sphere, it was an orange sphere and was shimmering light and reflecting off water. It was zip, it shot up, and then it was just like a speck of light in 1 second.
Okay, well, anyone who's a fisherman, like these people that were abducted were fishermen. They were trying to catch fish, right? On the lake at night. But anyways, when you go fishing, how do you attract fish?
With light, maybe, a lure.
Well, you can use lures. There are lures that emit LED lights now. There are things that are flashy, they vibrate, they look like some food that they, minnow or a fish that they would eat. And so the UFO phenomena can act almost like a lure. It appears to be something, hey, interesting. It's got lights, it's got, sounds, and it catches your attention. So once it catches your attention, like it did for Al Matthews, maybe he put out the thought that, hey, I want to see more, want to know more. I want to get closer to this phenomenon. And that I think led to us being abducted. Okay, so.
I think that relates to my only UFO sighting, a block from here. was May 28th,
Yeah.
2009. It was 6 days before our very first UFO meetup group in 2009. But for 2 years, I started teaching courses on UFOs at a big absorbed interest. And I was that interested. And then 6 days, then just saw a UFO fly by.
Yes. Well, if you put out the thoughts that you're interested, I think the phenomena will reveal
Yeah, I had a
itself
big interest at that time, still do, but I definitely put out the thought.
Yeah, but we're not sure what we're dealing with sometimes. I mean, there's this theory that some of these aliens are hostile to humans and are evil, and then there's some that are benign. But so the people that are trying to make contact, they don't know what's going to show up. Okay, it can appear to be benign to begin with. I mean, Valiant Thor, he didn't do anything initially that seemed to be hostile to anybody. Okay. Another thing, he could speak hundreds of languages, earth languages, just fluently. So there was something about Thor, but he presented himself as like a spiritual teacher, okay? And he made reference to God and Christ. But if you follow his spiritual teaching and use his spiritual, let's say, disciplines that he's taught, like there was a book I read called Teaching of the Pleiadians. And this was a channeled book from the Pleiadians and, human-looking aliens. The whole book was full of methods to make contact with them, spiritual disciplines. They were encouraging people to use these methods. And the methods can be a great, like guided imagery is one, meditation. But I know people that have used guided imagery with meditation to make contact, like this woman that's contacted me.
Well, I do that with Dave invocation practices, right in chapter 9 of my book, Freeing the Buddha, how to invoke Devas. It's how how to visualize Devas and make contact. That's right, like kind of a Tibetan Buddhist practice.
Yeah, so the practice of making contact with, let's say, non-human entities or spirits has been used by shamans. They use sometimes hallucinogenics to speed up that contact.
And we do it in Theravada Buddhism as well as Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah. But anyways, so, okay, once you establish contact, what are you making contact with? Is it an angel of God? Is it an alien? Is it a fairy? I did a fair amount of research. I spent some time in Scotland. I had a friend who was Scottish, and he told me that in the Highlands of Scotland, there's people still seeing fairies. So
I believe it.
Yeah, but if you look at the origin theories, there's a documentary that people should watch. It's called The Fairy Faith. It's a Canadian production. There was a fellow from Nova Scotia that, he was brought up with the folklore and lore of the fairy phenomena in Nova Scotia, and then he decided to expand it to research this phenomenon in Ireland and Scotland and and other places in Great Britain. And he interviewed a folklorist, I think it was in Ireland. They said, well, how do you explain the origin of fairies? Where did they come from? What are they? The fairy phenomena actually has parallels with the UFO phenomenon, according to researchers like Jacques Vallée.
Yeah.
He noticed that he mentioned this essay called The Secret Commonwealth.
Well, I just could interject in Buddhism, they're in the first heaven of the central sphere. They're Kambandas associated with the self. They're like leprechauns, fairies. That's all part of Buddhism. But I want to get back to Valiant Thor. I'm thinking, say you have a view, say as a Christian, you think, okay, he's not really a Christian view, but to others, maybe Valiant Thor was a good form of spirituality. Like you may object to it as a Christian, but what would non-Christians would say that he's okay? What do you think?
Well, a non-Christian or somebody who, believes that there are benign aliens might be okay with Valiant Thor's story. Dr. Strange. Dr. Strange had a Christian background himself.
Yeah, but you believe that there's benign aliens, right? You don't think that they're all bad?
Well, the Bible says if someone comes to you, whether it's a prophet or someone claiming to be Jesus or the Messiah or whatever, there's a way to test whether they really come from God or not, or that they're truly benign. There's a couple of different tests. One, Jesus said you can tell by their fruits. A good tree will bear good fruit, right? A bad tree will have rotten fruit or won't have any fruit at all. So what are the fruits of the Spirit that are mentioned in the Bible? Well, love, joy, peace, truth. Truth is a fruit of the Spirit. If if there's goodness, real goodness in this entity or person, there will be the fruits of the Spirit.
Oh, thank you, Gordy.
But one of the fruits that is missing in a lot of discernment is the concept of truth. See, today we live in a society where truth is very arbitrary, very relativistic.
Oh, yeah, what's true for you is not true for me. What's true for me, and
Well,
I want
this
to
is
be
right.
transgender because that's my truth.
That's right. People say, well, that's your truth, or
Yeah.
my
Oh
truth is
God.
something else.
So it's not objective logos
we don't
reality.
have this concept of absolute objective truth much anymore in our society. But for Christians, we believe that God is the source of all truth. Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life."
Yeah, in Buddhism we have Dhamma. The Buddha said it's not about him. It's about the Dhamma is actual truth or actual reality, things as they are.
If it is true, it can be verified. There should be good evidence for something that is true, reasons to believe it's true, that is true, not just a blind leap of faith. The mistake in some Christian churches or ministries is that they say, don't ask questions, just believe. You know what I mean? And I really hate that. I was at a community, I was studying worldviews and things in history in Switzerland. They told me, this was a community called L'Abri, started by Dr. Francis Schaeffer. They didn't like this idea that you should just believe by faith and don't have any evidence and no reasons to believe. They didn't think this idea of a leap of faith was something good. But in a lot of religions, especially the religions that have more mystical practices or teaching, there is, you can have direct revelation. David Koresh, I just saw the Netflix series Waco. He claimed he claimed he had direct revelation from God for what he was doing at the ranch before the thing was destroyed. But some of his revelation is contrary to. He was studying the Bible. He got people in his group, the Branch Davidians, to study the Bible, but it was all from his interpretation. I mean, people were not allowed to question his teaching. But in some denominations,
So I think though the government turned against him. I think they killed him.
Well,
I think the
main reason wasn't just because of his religious beliefs, but that they were acquiring and making money through buying and selling of guns and weapons, and some of the weapons were semi-automatic that could be.
I'm sympathetic to them because I think the government came in and killed them all.
Well, he was ready to surrender. If you watch the show Waco on Netflix, he was ready to surrender. He just wanted a bit more time to write out his statement of faith or what he was. He thought he had the keys of interpretation of the 7 seals in the Book of Revelations, and he was trying to write all of this stuff. But the FBI started getting impatient, but he was ready to surrender. But instead, they gave up. Waiting for him to say anything more, and then they sent in the tanks and
the government is really evil
with tear gas and then
killed kids as well, right?
And many kids, I think close to 80 people died. But they were following someone who claimed to be the Lamb of God, to be Christ. Well, that's contrary to what Jesus said. Jesus said there will be other people that will come in my name and be like an antichrist or a false Christ. An antichrist is someone who's a substitute for Christ.
Yeah.
Or a substitute for, the supreme or whatever.
But you're talking about testing people like Valiant Thor and others.
But the globalistic movement today, right now they don't have a single world leader to represent this world government. But there are some people within this movement that want that. There are some people within the UFO cult movement that are looking for a single world leader.
Oh, bad news.
That is going to be bad, very bad news. And then it's related to prophecies in the Bible about the mark of the beast, that if you don't take the mark, and some people are worried about even vaccines today, that if they force vaccines on people.
Yeah, I mean, think of it now with the COVID crisis, people in the future can watch this video. We don't know how this is going to end. Bill Gates wants to vaccinate the entire world, maybe chip us under the skin like the mark of the beast, and the vaccines could have a chip in it.
It could be a foreshadowing of what the Bible predicts is called the mark of the beast system. So we have the technology to implement that right now, the mark of the beast system, but it's not in place yet. We don't have a world leader. We don't know who that is. But if there's someone who comes out of this, comes out of the deep state, or comes out of the world, let's say the world globalist movement.
Well, you know about the Pindar, right? Like the Draco reptilians are believed to have
Yes, I've
one
heard
leader.
of Pindar. Yeah,
Pindar is like the chief executive officer of planet Earth. It could be Lord Jacob Rothschild or someone behind the scenes or reptilian. Could be the leader, the Pindar.
Yeah, the Pindar. I've heard about the Pindar.
It means pinnacle Draco. Pindar is pinnacle Draco. The Dracos are the reptilians.
Well, there are human beings that seem to be either genetically altered or possessed. Like David Icke is saying that some of these world leaders could be under some satanic possession. He talks about satanic rituals performed by some of the elite. If you're doing satanic rituals, there's a good chance that you're going to get possessed or controlled by some higher demonic power. And but if you're using certain mystical disciplines that are not, let's say, sanctioned by God, you can also come under the influence of spirits that are of a fallen nature. Okay, that's why I recommend the book Game of Gods, or go to YouTube and there's interviews with the author of the book, Carl Tucker. He's one of the top Canadian researchers. He's been to many United Nations conferences, Burning Man, transformative festivals. He's trying to find out where the pagan movement is going right now. All of it seems to be heading toward this idea of oneness, this idea of we have to create a global community. We can't see ourselves as Canadians or Americans or whatever anymore. We have to see ourselves as citizens of the world. So there's this concept of Gaia, that Gaia is this consciousness of the planet.
That's probably not good. They say Gaia means mother, right? That the Earth is conscious.
Okay. In about 20 years, or maybe over 20 years ago, I saw a video. It was called The Global Brain. The person who produced this video saw that the Earth itself was a consciousness. He labeled it Gaia. It's based on the Gaia hypothesis, that every living thing on this planet makes up this consciousness, which we call Gaia. But in this video, those people that don't, let's say, protect the planet, or they're not working to save, the environment, they are called skin encapsulated egos or cancer cells.
Oh, who calls them that?
In this video,
Oh.
That's the label that was used.
Whew.
Also, there's a book written by Joanna Michelson. She's a former New Ager. Anyways, she was interviewing and got quotes from some top UFO New Age leaders, and they were calling for some cleansing and culling of people on this planet. In order,
culling, like the Georgia Guidestones?
Well, population reduction. You have to get rid of people that object to this new globalism.
There you go. They want a 500 million total population of the world.
They want to reduce the population, according to the Georgia Guidestones, to 500 million people. Well, how are you going to do that?
And Bill Gates wants to do that, and I think Council on Foreign Relations, the elites seem to want to do that because they can't control 7.5 billion people. It's just more convenient for them to control.
It's easier to control a smaller group of people, especially people that are in compliance with your goals. But David Jacobs is saying the same. Abductees are telling him the same thing. Abductees are telling him that there's a government coming, an alien human hybrid government or something, and there's no future for those people that don't cooperate with the agenda. That sounds like the same thing. That,
maybe the future is a good rebirth. Maybe we should just die or be killed and have a good rebirth in heaven, go somewhere else, get out of here.
There is something that is called, the new birth in the Bible. Okay, it does talk about. It talks about the resurrection of the body someday. That our bodies are mortal; it'll perish, but our souls, I've been doing a lot of research into the near-death experience phenomenon. I've talked to people that have had NDEs. Some of these people, have professional backgrounds. College professor I spoke to, medical doctors, people that have had these near-death experiences or believe in them. The problem with the near-death experience is when your soul leaves your body, either at death or when you lose, when your heart and your brain stops, there's no no reaction to your, no response of your brain, and you're so concerned. Sometimes body is called OBEs, out of the body experiences. OBEs are often part of what are called near-death experiences. But there is something called the intermediary realm that people go to. It's a realm where you think you're meeting dead relatives. You might think you're meeting angels, luminous beings. Even Jesus has appeared in near-death experiences. Okay, but in one book I read recently, written by Judy Baccarat, it's called Glimpsing Heaven. She was researching people that came from the death. People that some of them were Christians, some of them were not Christians, different people that were having these near-death experiences. There are beings that are called spirit guides in the near-death experience that people have encountered. Some of these spirit guides are highly deceptive. If you meet some of these spirit guides, they will tell you everything you believe is not true. Everything is illusion. Everything you think is true is not true. They'll say things like that to people. Or if you are someone like Carl Gustav Jung and you have a near-death experience, you might meet some of the archetypes that of archetypal deities of like Greek gods or something. If you're into that, you'll meet something that fits your belief system, your cultures. So there are. Howard Storm was an atheistic art professor. I've interviewed him several times, sometimes over an hour or more at a time. He's had a near-death experience that converted him from being an atheistic, art professor to now he's a minister of a church in Kentucky. Now he claimed he met Jesus in the first encounter when he thought he was being dragged or pulled into a hellish realm. When he left his body in the hospital in France, he was showing students, great art and art galleries and things. And then he had a rupture of intestinal acid and digestive juices into his lower abdomen, and it was creating incredible pain. So in the hospital, he saw his body on the table or a gurney, but he was outside. But then outside he heard voices begging him to follow. So he was going down this dark corridor, he thought, in the hospital. But these voices started to become more urgent, and they started to grab and pull him, and they were not so friendly after a while. So he was
Sounds
scared.
like a ghost realm, like he was encountered the ghost realm,
in
had
some
to get
realm where
back
there
to
were
his
beings
body.
that were attacking him or grabbing him. And so he was very frightened. So he said, whoa, gee, am I going to a hellish realm or something? So he prays. He said, God, he said, Jesus, save me. He didn't know what to say, but he ended up saying something like that. And in the darkness, this light appeared, and he claimed Jesus appeared to him. Okay. And when I read and heard the testimony, I said, yeah, well, maybe it's Jesus he met. Maybe this is good, the real Jesus. Well, later he meets these beings called luminous beings. He calls them luminous beings. Some people might call them angels, okay? But there's other people in the near-death experience that meet what are called spirit guides. They don't appear in a human form. And one lady who had a congregational background, a Christian denominational background, her father was a minister. She was brought up in the church. When she goes into this intermediary realm, she meets these beings that look like two black and white discs. Two discs that are black and white, about 8 inches. They speak to her, and they're saying to her, everything you believe is an illusion. Everything you believe is wrong. Did she believe that? No. She said, no, wait a minute.
No.
You're telling me something I don't believe, okay? But so in this intermediary realm, you can be deceived by beings that claim to be your dead relatives, another Jesus. Later on, he asked Jesus this question that's related to our interest in the UFO phenomena. Howard Storm asked Jesus, did you create life elsewhere in the universe? Simple question. And Jesus said yes.
Good question.
Yeah, and Jesus said yes. There are many worlds, and I've been to these worlds, and I've created life elsewhere, life on other planets. Okay. Now that doesn't sound out of the possibility of what Christians believe, because we don't know. there are so many planets now that have been detected, you know.
In Islam, they say there's life on extraterrestrial life on other planets.
Okay, but then Jesus says, would you like, Howard is saying, you know, what do they look like? You know, do they all look like us, or what do they look like? You know, so Jesus didn't just show pictures, but paraded. This Jesus showed pictures, paraded these different aliens in front of Howard. Some of them look human, look like us. Some of them were not so like us. Some of them look like kind of creepy underwater creatures, you know, that would be out of a Lovecraft novel or something. And then Howard said, stop showing me anymore. He was getting frightened by some of these aliens that were presented to him, you know. And I said, were these pictures? He said, no, these were, Jesus paraded all these aliens. And then I said, well, what else? Did Jesus say anything else? Well, he said he's in another interview I saw of Howard Storm, not the interview I did with him. He said, when Jesus told him he goes to these other worlds, he appears in their form.
So Jesus appears in the alien form.
According to this other interview I saw with Howard Storm, I asked Howard, do you remember Jesus saying that he could appear in this other form? And when he was on the phone with me, he was not sure that he wanted to say that, because that has serious implications, especially because some of the aliens that appeared to him were really scary looking. Okay, Joanna Michelson, who wrote this the book, The Beautiful Side of Evil, she was taught through a guided imagery method for Silva mind control to imagine a spiritual master. So she did. And she chose Jesus to be the spiritual master that would come out of this elevator. A door would open in this laboratory she created in her mind. And Jesus appeared looking like Jesus at first. But then when she did the guided imagery again, using the same method, next time Jesus came out of the elevator, he had a face looking like a werewolf.
Wow, what's going on here? I'm just
so
thinking
Joanna,
with the time, maybe we should wind down in 5 minutes,
okay,
for about 50 minutes.
Well, that's why if you have a UFO encounter and you have encounters with beings that are what you appear to be benign or spiritual, or another Jesus, it may be not the real Jesus that they're encountering. Sometimes it might be, sometimes it isn't. But I've been to a website about encounters with Jesus and near-death experience, and some of these manifestations of Jesus can shapeshift. They can look like Jesus as we know him, but he can shapeshift to look like the Buddha.
I just want to comment, in Buddhism, we don't have this problem, because before the Buddha died, he was emphatic that he would never be seen again, because going to nirvana, I mean, he no longer exists. He says, I will not be seen by devas or men. So it is impossible from a Buddhist view for anyone to see the Buddha as a human or go to heaven and see him. Like, the Buddha does not exist according to Buddhism. It is impossible. This could never happen in Buddhism.
Well, like for instance, Rael claimed to meet some of the great prophets of all the major religions of the world. And like Mohammed, he claimed
he probably claimed to meet Buddha too. I don't believe him.
And maybe Jesus or Buddha.
Yeah,
so there are entities can shapeshift. That's been fairly well documented. And the jinn in Arabian folklore or beliefs, they are shapeshifters as well. They can appear in many forms, human forms and other forms. The Greek gods could also appear in human form and animal form. So we have a phenomena that's associated with the UFO phenomena where shapeshifting is involved. Also, why is there shapeshifting? Why do they need to shapeshift to look in a more pleasing form to us?
Yeah, why?
Why? Because there could be reasons of
deception?
They're trying to deceive people.
Yep.
Jesus himself warned about wolves in sheep's clothing that would enter the church and deceive the sheep.
Well, I believe, like what David Icke says, that these reptilians disguise themselves as, you know, the Rothschild family or the royal family to deceive us and control us. Yeah.
So, if they can shapeshift and their intention is deception, what is the purpose of this deception? Why?
To take over the world. That's why.
Well, yeah. Well, that could be one of their agendas, to take over the world and make us all slaves or get rid of people that don't follow their agenda. That could be a possibility. So globalism, has a spiritual component to it. Okay, it's not just a bunch of people wanting to create a world government, but there is, a coming together of religions at the United Nations at times. The Vatican has had gatherings of people from major world religions in the city of Assisi, where St. Francis grew up. And so why are there all these interfaith gatherings associated with the United Nations, interfaith gatherings that took place in Salt Lake City and Toronto, the Parliament of World Religions? Why are we all seeing this happening?
It's orchestrated from the top down,
There
probably by aliens.
There are some spiritual, let's say, authority or source that is trying to orchestrate this coming together of all people and all religions. But if the book of Revelations reveal that this coming world order is going to be Antichrist, it's going to persecute people that don't take the mark of the beast, that don't worship the Antichrist. So if that is the case,
I'm not taking the vaccine. Tell Bill Gates I'm not getting the vaccine. I'm not going to be treated. So I won't take the mark of the beast. So persecute me. I won't be laughing in the future.
Well, some of us will maybe face persecution, censorship, and so on. So, but our freedoms are slowly disappearing with this pandemic. The right to assemble. There are certain things that are considered essentials, but other things that are not.
Come and join us on Sunday. We're marching at Science World. I was at the last one. We had 125 people. You can see my video. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Our rights are being a freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. These are fundamental rights. And the sad thing is 80% of the population just goes along with it. We have to stay safe. We have to stay.
But some of the big tech companies, according to Tucker Carlson, are trying to enforce these draconian lockdown,
they all work together, right? They all work together.
Some of the owners of major media companies in the world some of them have aligned themselves already with a globalist agenda.
That's an understatement. Little businesses go under. The big box stores, they can stay open, but little businesses are going bankrupt right now. It's like the Great Depression.
Yeah. So but the UFO phenomena will play a role in this whole what's coming.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Gordy. Maybe we could stop here, but I think it's so true. The UFO phenomena is part of, and I think I'm trying to push it over to the window to make this more of our discourse conversation, that people have got to talk about the UFO phenomena. It's part of our globalism. It's part of the problem. It's part of this pandemic. It's part of the lockdown. It's part of the whole picture,
Yeah, that's why we recommend not just reading one perspective on this phenomena, that there are different perspectives. Some of them appear to be more positive, some are negative, but there's reasons for people coming to certain conclusions. But even the ones that claim that these beings are all here for a benign purpose, if you look more deeply into what they're teaching us, what they want us to believe, then it has serious implications if they're trying to create some kind of government on this planet for mankind.
Yeah.
So okay. I think we summed it up a little bit today.
Yeah, you've got a lot of knowledge. I want you back on the show to talk some more. We just go on and on and on. This is great, Gordy. After these 10 years I've known you, I'm so happy we're finally doing a series of videos. Yay!
It's almost 1:30. Wow, we've been doing this almost since 11.
Yeah, okay, we can wrap up now.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up and let's see what the response is to some of the stuff we talked about today.
Okay.
People have to make up their own minds. We can't say you have to believe this or that.
Yeah.
People have to do their own research and, hopefully pray to God and ask to know what the truth is.
Okay, thanks, Gordy.
Okay, bye for now.